We continue our series of interviews introducing to our viewers the future priests of Most Holy Trinity Seminary. We are joined by a French seminarian, Damien Dutertre. He's in his third year of theology and has received all the minor orders. He is scheduled to receive the subdiaconate on February. Hello, Damien. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello, Father. Thank you.
You are from France. What part of France are you from?
I am from Brittany, which is in the west of France, northern France. It's a very nice region. As a matter of fact, it's very touristic. There are a lot of tourists who go to Brittany on vacation. And it's also a very traditional region in a way. You can see a lot of different old churches and Calvaries and all kind of old architectures. So it's a very interesting region.
And I believe you were baptized in the Novus Ordo, but very early on you became a traditional Catholic. Were you a member of the Society St. Pius X, or how did you come to the knowledge of the true faith?
I never went through the society step. I just follow my parents basically. So I was baptized in Novus Ordo, and I had some catechism in the Novus Ordo that I remember, and I would go a few times in Novus Ordo. But already my parents were inclined to the traditional Mass because they understood that there was something wrong with the new Mass, although they couldn't explain what exactly was wrong. So they had like a practical orientation toward the traditional Mass, but at the same time they wouldn't completely break with the Novus Ordo. So it took some time, a little bit, for them to understand that the problem was deeper than just a question of Latin and respect in the Mass. And so later on, they basically just worked completely with the Novus Ordo, and I just follow my parents as a teenager. And later on, I got a little more deeply interested in theological discussion, or you can say like doctrinal discussions, and I was convinced myself of the sedevacantist position.
We can see here a picture of you with Bishop Dolan. How old were you when this picture was taken?
That's actually a picture of the ordination of Father Ricard. I believe this was 6 years ago, which means I would be 17 years old.
Okay. So that ordination was in France. Could you explain to our viewers the history of the traditional movement in France?
Well, yes, I will try to be brief at the same time explain everything more or less. The traditional movement in France was quite strong already right at the beginning. After Vatican II, some priests reacted, and a lot of faithful, especially after the new Mass, after 69. So the priests reacted to that. I'm thinking particularly of l'Abbé de Nantes, Père Barbara, Abbé Coache, and others, who would actually do some meetings and conferences, trying to explain to the people what was wrong and trying to organize things. But at that time, really, the things were more practical. Like they didn't understood how that defection could happen. So it was some very primary reactions, you may say. I remember reading that in the book of Father Coache, that he would go around in all the parishes with his car, and he would take all the bad literature, the modernist pamphlets, which were at the back of the churches, and he would took them all away from the churches. And once he got arrested by the police because of that. So that was kind of a primary reaction. So Bishop Lefebvre at that time didn't have so much great of an influence. All that came later because all the faithful organized into associations, and they would buy a building, a chapel, something, a place to say mass, and everything necessary to say mass. So the only thing missing at that time was priests that would offer the traditional mass, and the faithful would be more concerned about the new mass and the fact that they wanted the traditional sacraments. And at that time, we are speaking now about the 70s, the first priests were coming out of Econ. So the first priests of the Society of St. Pius X were coming out of the seminary. So Bishop Lefebvre really took over the traditional movement in France because of that situation where he could actually provide the priests necessary for those associations to serve all those chapels. So that's how it went. And in 76, I believe, 76, Bishop Lefebvre organized in France what he called a district, which is basically like a wild association of priests in France. So they celebrated recently the 40th anniversary of that foundation. And now they have 170 priests in France and many schools, many priories. They say that they deserve 200 mass centers every Sunday. And they say that they have 2,000 students in their schools. So they have really a huge presence in France. I would say that the sedevacantist movement in France is probably 1/10 of the size of a society. So there is really a big predominance of a society in France, much more than here in the United States.
So, with regard to sedevacantism, especially today, when you go back to France, you have a place to go to Mass?
Yes, I do. And this summer I went again to the same place where I went as a child, a teenager. In Rennes, there is a priest who offers Mass and the other sacraments.
And now that we are talking about your country, you have a big problem with Muslims in France. How serious this issue is?
It's quite a hot controversy now because of all the migrants coming. It's really a threat, I would say, to France. But at the same time, that's just a consequence of the apostasy of France and the policy of the governments. So they are now accepting all those migrants, and the Muslims in France now have more and more power every day, and they are more and more numerous, and they also are really religious. And the French are not religious anymore. They don't do anything. It's complete just atheism, or practical atheism at least. I was in a supposedly Catholic school, but it's the same thing really as a public school. And I can say that no young people has a faith anymore. Nobody believes anymore. But for the Muslim part, I don't know how it's going to end up. I guess that we will have to try to convert them, and probably we'll be confronted to that, yes, more and more.
Yes, and do you feel like, or say, afraid of certain areas in France or where you live specifically, that you cannot even go, and because of the presence of Muslims?
There are some areas in France where indeed you cannot go without being threatened, and especially in Marseille, there are some places where even the police doesn't go anymore. But also on Fridays, also you have the other problem of when it's time for prayer on Fridays, some streets would just not be accessible because all the Muslims would be there to pray. But really, that's really confined to some places. Where I live, I didn't see that yet. so I don't feel that threatened. And I'm at the same time, I don't feel really afraid of it. It's just something that I have to take into consideration.
Yes, for sure. And now, coming back here to the seminary, changing the subject, how is your life here in the seminary? Which kind of courses are you taking, and what other duties you have in your daily life?
Well, I did 2 years of philosophy, so I had the complete training of philosophy in 2 years. And then I went to theology, which is now my third year of theology. So I studied different treatises, and so that's like the heart of the seminary training. At least seminary studies is philosophy first, and then theology, dogmatic theology, and moral theology. And then around that, you have other classes which are also very important, but I would say secondary: the liturgy class, the history, and canon law. We had also a class on pastoral theology. And this year we have also other classes. I have a class on the magisterium of the church, which is quite interesting compared to what you can hear sometimes from certain priests. And we have also another class on the Nouvelle Théologie, the new theology, which is like the theology of Vatican II, basically, but before Vatican II, before it was canonized, you may say, at Vatican II. And yes, apart from that, I had the duty of sacristan for many years. I was already assisting in the sacristy my first year, and then I got appointed sacristan. I'm still sacristan today, but that normally should stop very soon.
So, and your helper is also from France. You think he will be the one to take over?
I don't know, Father. I don't know. It might be a logical thing to think, because, well, I would say a big part of the nice things we have actually in the sacristy are from France, so it seems like a natural thing to appoint a French sacristan.
So, for example, to prepare a pontifical high mass, as a sacristan, what you have to do? You have to take care of everything, even like the preparing the albs. The washing the albs, ironing them, and everything.
Yes, everything. Yes, you have to do everything. You have to take care of the vestments, the sacred linens, corporal purificators. You have to take care of the altar, so the altar cloths, the candles, flowers if there are, but I am not setting the flowers, thanks God. And some other things. Also the sanctuary, sometimes, for example, for pontifical mass, you might need to prepare some special things and prepare the sacred vases and things like this. So, but I'm not the only one. I'm helped by Henri, who is the other French seminarian, and also by other seminarians to do the ironing part and washing and things like this.
So that's your life here in the seminary, and once you get ordained a priest, you have any idea what are you going to be doing? If you're going to stay here in this country, you're going back to France?
It has not been decided yet. Eventually I will go back to France, and I want to go back to France as soon as I can. But now it hasn't been decided whether I would go right away after my ordination to France, or if I have to wait 1 year, 2 years before going back actually to France.
And you think it's possible to start eventually even a school in France and seminary perhaps?
Yes, I think we say in English, where there is a will, there is a way. I think eventually it will be possible, but it's true that it's difficult already because of the administration. They really want to avoid Catholic school. They don't want Catholic school anymore in France. And today they are discussing about making a law which would basically render impossible the illicit the erection of any school, private school.
Oh, I thought in France you had the liberté, huh? No?
Liberté ou la mort.
So, do you have a message for those young people who are considering the priesthood?
They have to pray, they have to think about it, to meditate, and realize how lofty it is, how lofty is the priesthood. It's really a grace today, and especially today, I would say, because there are not many already who retain the faith, even less now who are ordained priests. So it's really a big grace and very important grace, and if they can have it, they should really take the opportunity.
Yes, so thank you very much, Damien, for your time. We are going to end our interview, but before, I would like to ask our viewers to keep our seminarians in your prayers, and also remember, the more vocations we have and we receive here, which is a great thing, the more help we are going to need from our benefactors. So already this year we have all of the rooms taken, and even there are 2 seminarians who are living outside in a house which is very close to the seminary, like 1 minute, 2 minutes driving. So, and already we have a situation which is not the best. So both prayers and the material help is needed from our benefactors. So thank you for that. And thank you, Damien, for having joined us today.
Thank you, Father.
And I will continue these interviews very soon. So I hope you will join us again. Thank you.